请出示您的健康码。Please show your health QR code. 什么？要电话号码 ？What? My phone number? 健康码，请出示您的健康码。The health QR code. Please show your health QR code. 没有的是，谁给我？你没有给我。What is a health QR code? I don't know about it. No one gives it to me. The security staff repeatedly asked for a health QR code, and the old man, hurrying to enter the subway station, repeatedly cried out his confusion. We don't know what he is desperately heading to. It may be his partner needing help in hospital miles away, or the family members are starving and he needs to bring back food. But we do know that he could not go right now by taking subway, which is often the cheapest for the elderly, only because he does not have the health QR code, or he could not provide it. So, what is a health QR code? It is a system that China used to prevent COVID-19 pandemic from spreading so severely. Ever since early 2020, people put their travel history, health condition, and all etc. into a popular wallet app, Alipay, for smartphones. They can get their health QR codes. The codes change color, green, yellow, or red, to indicate whether one's free to travel, have to stay home quarantine for 7 to 14 days, or must quarantine for at least 2 weeks. Canons behind it is to record areas where infected people stay as dangerous zones. If a healthy person stays there for too long, he or she may be infected as well, thus turning from green to yellow or red code, and has to quarantine. Basically, the electronic health QR code, tracking people's travel history, makes all potentially positive cases quarantine, so that the majority of the population who are healthy are protected. This is actually very effective. According to the World Health Organization, on average, from February 2020 to 2022, the weekly new positive cases in China is only around 1,000, which is astounding. Therefore, we have to admit that the health QR code system protects China and fewer people will suffer from this pandemic. As the story I told at the beginning of this podcast, we see that the health QR code policy is not perfect, because it forgets the elderly population who have great difficulty accessing to new technology. Signing up for electronic health QR code heavily relies on smartphone use, but the smartphones are too expensive. It costs almost half of the average monthly pension in Beijing, China's capital city, and one of the most developed places. If you are living in rural areas and earning far less than that, how would you be able to get a phone if you need all your pension money to eat, pay for medical care, and all the etc.? Therefore, it makes sense as the research shows that almost 80% of all Chinese elderly could not access to proper technology. Without a smartphone, how would they be able to access to the electronic health QR code? And when most of the places in China during COVID pandemic requires that code, this group of people are constrained in mobility. China has already tried to solve this by providing the paper health QR code. In Shanghai province ever since August 2021, aged people over 60 can get their health QR code printed at district administrative service centers or community service centers. It is true that by getting these printed QR codes, elderly people would not have to buy a cell phone. However, the paper QR codes are actually printed by young staff through a super self-service machine. The super self-service machine, isn't it sound familiar? In some way, it is similar to smartphone use. All this belong to the area of new technology. When the majority of the Chinese elderly are lack of the experience using smartphone, how can we expect them to use these self-service printers themselves proficiently? You might say that there are young staff to help, but what if all the staff are busy? Or this elderly go to the community service center too early when no one's at work? When the seniors are along with new technology, we may conclude that the majority of them will still be confused, vulnerable, and struggle. Ultimately, I want to point out that having the access to new tech devices is great, but only when one knows how to use them, and currently this elderly don't. Therefore, we would need to help in this aspect and truly empower them to deal with digital devices more independently. Education is the key. Think about this. When one is equipped with adequate skills to operate computers, he or she can actively perform various tasks as he or she wishes if he or she is given a computer. And this applies to the elderly situation. Given that they have already been provided with self-service printers, once they learn the adequate skills to use those machines, they can get their health QR code independently. With those codes, they can go anywhere as they like. Supermarket, city park, all the etc. Only pointing out the importance of education means nothing. The more important point is how exactly education takes place, in what form, by what means. We should learn from America's Get Set Up online community about its peer-to-peer education form. By this, I mean that having elderly people who are familiar with new technology, whether it's smartphone or self-service printer use, to be the teachers and help their peers. When the teachers are also the elderly people, they understand each other and their needs best. What does this mean? If we are inviting young people to teach, since we are usually grew up with computers and smartphones, we will explain things based on these learning experiences that the seniors cannot relate it to. While the elderlies in their 60s or 70s were growing up with written letters or telegraph, when they teach each other, they can give examples to relate back to these common experiences and making the learning more relatable and easier. A step further, we want to provide such peer-to-peer education to the elderly around the country. How are we able to access them? As you are hearing my voice, this is the answer I give. Yes, through radio show. Since our goal is to help more elderly get rid of the helpless situation while dealing with new technology, we want to choose a medium that most Chinese elderly can access. And radio is the best medium, as statistics confirms its popularity. In 2020, 99.38% of the whole Chinese population had access to radio. When the most aged people can access to this education program, they are more able to learn the new technology use and get their health QR code themselves. Ultimately, they are able to embrace the agency over their mobility. You are only hearing my voice now because in this episode I just want to raise awareness about the exaggerated digital divide the Chinese elderly faces during the COVID-19 pandemic, introduce why the peer-to-peer education is important. But later on, to really help address this issue, I will invite seniors and record their voices and knowledges through the format of me interviewing them. The senior teachers don't need to be industrial experts, but neighbors, family friends, or anyone who is familiar with the self-service machine use and printing health QR codes and are willing to help their peers. Not only they are encouraged to share their learning experience with those machines, but also go through the process of operating those machines and printing QR codes step by step. Hearing their voices, more seniors around China can learn and really get rid of the inability to deal with new technology. In a more general sense, why is this very important? Don't forget that we are all heading to the aging society right now, and each of us individually will grow old one day. So we should always consider the elderly and the aged community.